Hello, good morning, sir. Sir, your microphone is muted. Microphone. Uh, you are not participants. Can you hear him? I'm actually unable to
No,
hear.
madam. He's not audible. Still not audible, sir.
Not audible.
No, sir. No, sir. Still not audible. No, sir.
Can you directly? Acha, you have left the meeting. It's mute. It's muted. Your.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Now you are audible.
Thanks. Yep, that's great.
So shall we start?
Sure.
Okay. So good morning, all of you. Welcome to the last day of 5-day faculty development program on cybersecurity in smart cities. On behalf of the Department of Computer Application, it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Arijit Karati, Assistant Professor, Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Sun Yat-sen University, Taiwan, in this session to deliver an expert lecture on cybersecurity, a smart city imperative. Dr. Karati received the PhD degree from Indian Institute of Technology, Indian School of Mines, Dhanbad, India. He was associated as a postdoctoral fellow in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Sun Yat-sen University, Kaohsiung, Taiwan. Presently, he is working as an assistant professor in the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, National Sun Yat-sen University, Kaohsiung, Taiwan. He was a recipient of 108th Postdoctoral Research Academic Research Award from the Ministry of Science and Technology, Taiwan in 2020. His research interests include applied cryptography, cybersecurity, network and communication protection, automotive security, and decentralized data privacy. He has published more than 24 research papers in national and international journals and conferences of repute. His research articles achieved nearly 416 citations by the eminent scientists and researchers. Now, I invite Dr. Karati to deliver his lecture.
Thank you, madam, for your nice introduction. Let me share the slides.
Sir, your microphone is again in the mute mode.
Sorry. Yeah. So actually, I was testing something. Okay. So thank you for your nice introduction. So today I'll be discussing on the cybersecurity perspective, in the field of smart cities. So before moving to this talk, I'd like to thank madam and the course coordinator, like the director, moderator, and the program coordinator, and obviously the team for this beautiful event. Like, I hope you all are doing great in this pandemic situation, and I hope this will end soon. So, before starting this talk, I'd like to share some of my research areas so that if you are interested, you can start collaboration or some possible research collaborations. So here, so this is yeah, yeah. So this is my field of research. So basically, my work is based on data encryption, data like digital signature, sign encryption for some technological infrastructures such as your IoT security, edge computing, blockchain, and name data networking. So basically, presently I am doing work on this specific field like IoT security, edge computing, blockchain, and name data networking. Possibly in future, I'll be working on like federated learning also. So if you are interested, any of you do some collaboration, then we are always happy to offer that. So basically, my work is like based on your encryption, digital signature, and sign encryption. So those concepts are based on some modern cryptographic, like public key techniques, such as your identity-based cryptography, certificate-based cryptography, attribute-based cryptography, and lattice-based cryptography. So these are the techniques that we are working on in like National Sun Yat-sen University to provide a better society in terms of providing like privacies, like security and privacies in such fields. So now, don't waste time. Let's start this today's talk. So in this talk, I'll be discussing a brief overview of your smart cities by highlighting the security challenges and possible cryptographic techniques that could be introduced in our society to provide like CIA properties, like security properties. So in this talk, first we'll discuss a basic introduction about the smart cities, right? And then we'll specifically identify some of the key features that are very important when you are realizing the smart city securities. And also, I will be discuss some kind of your like some modern technique that are feasible for this in smart city environment. And also, we'll be discussing some of the future research directions. So, if you are interested, you can start work on. So that's the basic agenda for this today's talk. So let's get the introduction part of the smart city. So as we know that in nowadays, like cities are growing by incorporating their technologies, like different technologies. So that is the main advancement in these cities, which makes our city as smart city, right? So technology is empowering, like powering the rise of smart cities, transforming everything from the traffic management to waste collection. So we dig into the digital revolution, giving rise to the cities that are more connected in terms of more connected connectivity, that's sustainable and efficient. So that's the main part of our cities. Like nowadays, our cities there are lots of connections in terms of like digital connections, network connections, sustainability, and also efficient. Over half the world's population currently lives in urban area. So according to research findings, we have seen that by 2050, the number of like people is like who are living in the smart societies that will grow from 50% to the 70%. So it is it is at least 70%. So it is kind of now we can expect that we are now slowly moving towards our digital society as well as our digital world, where we'll not go anymore to the bank probably and we'll start transactions using your smartphone. So that's very interesting. But thing is that when we are moving towards our digital society, that makes many security vulnerabilities that stop realizing the growth in the smart society. So along with this growing population, new challenges always are emerging as cities look to improve everything from infrastructure to connectivity. So here we can see that since the technology is growing in a rapid space and also that are going to be incorporated in our smart cities, many of us, we are seeing this is a very good business opportunity for us so that if we can incorporate such kind of technology, we can also get profit or will be benefited from that. So here, as a result, cities are undergoing a digital transformation, which nowadays we call it as smart cities. So smart and sustainable city development specifically will be carried out by a diverse kind of ecosystems of providers in innovative domains involving like your state of arts technology, including like your critical and complex ICT implementation. So something like this. So here we can see it's very kind of modern or like we can think of it as kind of our dream where we can see different technologies they are incorporating among themselves and they are coordinating among themselves to provide us a better life. Increasing this ICT complexity, like your hyper connectivity, lots of connectivity, uh, with the help of like your Internet of Things environment, as well as the generation of a huge volume of data. For example, if you are talking about smart society, so we'll discuss what is actually smart society. So here you can see that a lots of significant amount data are being generated. So when the data is being generated, that is not a problem. The problem is when those data are being transmitted from one end to another end, or we are storing those data in some remote storage space. Uh, that actually that actually shows you some cyber security threats. So Here we can see what is the definition of your smart cities. So according to ITU, the smart city definition is given as here like a smart, sustainable city is an innovative city that uses information and communication technology, that is your ICT, and other means to improve the quality of life, efficiency of urban operation and services, and competitiveness while ensuring that it meets the needs of present and future generation with respect to our economic, social, environmental, as well as cultural aspects, as well as your cultural aspects. So it's a very kind of what to say, like it's a very well-defined, well-defined definition. So they are trying to, I think, trying to show us that due to the heavy growth or a rapid growth in technology, or specifically we can say in ICT field, we are actually trying to incorporate or integrate, specifically integrate all such technologies. So nowadays our life become more easy. So we sit in our room or maybe somewhere, we don't need to worry about where my data is or how we can how we can share such kind of data from one end to another end. So nowadays, accessing information from anywhere, anytime is quite easy. That also improve us, like humans, like overall quality of life. So basically, if you see these smart cities, so there are three factors in the smart cities. The main factor is your sustainability or sustainable. The second one is effective, and the third one is efficient. So these are the key factors for your smart cities. So we are now talking about the smart cities, and later we'll be discussing about some of the cyber security aspects in these smart cities. So basically, when you are talking about smart city, that means smart. So how to define this smart? Smart means kind of your intelligence, right? So intelligence, which can show you sustainability, which will tell you some effective solution, and also those technique that finds those effective solution should be efficient. So how to achieve those kind of features to realize your smart cities? So it is obviously we have to provide continuous monitoring, automations, as well as your control, continuous control. With the help of your continuous monitoring, automation, and control, we can provide a sustainable environment, and also we can provide some effective solution, because based on your historical analysis, if you keep on monitoring the environment, you can provide some effective solution, as well as based on your research findings, maybe we can provide some efficient solution as well. So in smart cities, actually, you can see there are different technologies from the from the beginning itself. We are talking about the different technologies. So those technologies, when they are in a single platform, they give you some kind of hyper connectivity, hyper complexity, hyper volume of data. So these are the three different challenges when we are defining some kind of like security solutions or some kind of realizations of your smart sustainable cities. So these are the three factors. Now you can see there are lots of connection between different technologies. At the same time, there are lots of connectivity inside a single technology as well. There are lots of hyper complexity, because now we are talking about different technologies. They are collaborating among themselves. So it is a hyper complexity and hyper volume of data. Why we are talking about hyper volume of data? Now you can imagine you have a smartwatch, for example, and also you have a smartphone. You also use social media, and you have a habit, for example, of sharing some data over social media, for example. So those data can be shared with the help of your phone also. At the same time, it can be shared by the help of your smartwatch also. So it is large volume of data with some repetition. It is also possible that we are getting same copy of data, similar kind of data. So how to filter out such kind of redundant data is also some kind of challenges in your smart cities. So summarizing this, we can see that We have a lots of data. We can think of it's kind of a big data, hyper complexity, as well as your hyper connectivity. So these main three parts gives you or show you high vulnerabilities or cyber security scope or cyber security challenges. So here you can see that smart and sustainable cities have this ICT as key enabler. This implies that your combination of these three factors, hyper connectivity, hyper complexity, complexity, because now we are going to highly interconnected system where each and every devices are connected in our system. So it is called as like hyper complexity, like highly interconnected component and high volume of data that are being generated in every second. So how to deal with such kind of data? So when you are dealing with data and you don't have any infrastructure to handle such data, that also shows you some kind of security loopholes or security breaches. So we have to provide a better infrastructure, a smart, a reliable infrastructure in such a way that we can handle our hyper connectivity, like lots of connections still our infrastructure can support. Hyper complexity, although it is a highly integrated devices, then also we can provide some kind of like we can handle it. And hyper volume of data, like big data analysis, that parts of the big data analysis. So this is a typical overview of your smart cities, like definition. So here, quickly summarizing this smart city definition, a smart, sustainable city is an innovative city that uses ICT and other means of improved quality of life, efficiency of urban operation and services, and competitiveness while ensuring that it meets the needs of present and future generation with respect to our economy, social, environmental, as well as cultural risk. So how we can provide all those things? Obviously, IoT is a like take a huge role in this smart city concept. So moving towards the infrastructure, so it is basically kind of a high level architecture of your smart city. So here you can see this is one architecture of these smart cities or smart city security system. So here you can see that smart city is not a new concept. Smart city, how to say that it is a smart device or smart city? So smart city always getting smarter with the help of your intelligence, like your AI concept, as well as your security and how we are solving those problems. So it is not a new concept. A smart city is not a new concept. So what is the new here? The new is how we can integrate all these emerging technologies or the recent technologies into a single platform so that we can share our data efficiently in a reliable manner, and also we can protect our day-to-day like life activity as well as our personal data. So as you can see that it can be divided into two different parts. The first one is your application and the second one in terms of your infrastructure. So application we know like there are different application in this smart city. Now you can see these all those like applications already you might be like it is known to you. For example, it is already known to you. But the thing is that in smart city we are now talking about how to integrate such kind of technologies so that one intelligent transportation system now can talk with your food and drug safety system, for example, or your digital forensic. You know digital forensic, right? So you are handling some digital evidence, for example, in a secure manner. They can also talk with your smart health. How? Obviously, with the help of your IoT. But here also there are certain challenges while you are talking about or while you are integrating such kind of infrastructure. So let's discuss this overview of the smart city system or the security system. So coming to this first part, that is the infrastructure. So infrastructure actually is made by three different components. The first one is your sensing layer. Is your sensing layer. The second one is your communication layer. The third one is your data layer. So here, while we are talking about sensing layer, so how it can sense? That means, for example, somewhere some accident happened. For example, in a road transportation system. So they might sense those accidents. So how they can sense in terms of, for example, capturing some picture on the road, for example. Okay, or there are some different sensors like temperature, who is actually sensing some temperature, or what is the forecast, weather forecast. So all those parts can be defined or can be captured with the help of your IoT devices, right? So sensing layer considers some physical infrastructures as well as some devices. So physical infrastructure means it could be your road, it could be your bridge, it could be your buildings like your healthcare buildings or your apartment or some kind of buildings, a set of vehicles that can also be considered in our smart cities. So these are some physical infrastructures who are taking role as a physical infrastructure in our smart city system, in a smart city system. And in this physical infrastructure, like with the help of this physical infrastructure, we may have like now some IoT devices and IoT technology. So on the above of this particular infrastructure layer, we have some IoT uh, concept. So here you can see some IoT is kind of your RFID. It's very like common nowadays. GPS very common nowadays. NFC very common. NFC payment also. Radar is there. Zigbee communications are there. So there are different IoT infrastructure and style there. Actually, uh, like they are incorporated in this in our society over this physical infrastructure. That means I can now put some GPS tracker, for example, or speedometer on the road even or on the bridge even to check which vehicle has like top speed of more than 50 kmph, for example. So it is possible. So that's why we are saying that in the sensing layer, under the sensing layer, what we can see under the sensing layer, we have like your physical infrastructure, and physical infrastructure is built based on some physical entity like a road, bridge, building, vehicles, or some other physical objects. On the top of this, we have to mount some kind of your IoT devices or some kind of IoT kind of like smart gadgets. So what would be those for some communication like device? It is also possible. So those are some this kind of devices you can see. So those all come under your sensing layer. Your sensing layer. On the top of this particular layer, we can find some communication layer. So communication layer again it is divided. I hope you know it is two different parts. That is your transport layer and access network, right? So this access network means how we are accessing those sensors, and so the access network will be responsible for such kind of communication. So here we can say there are like lots of like access network mechanisms are there, like your microwave, like your communication style, like your Wi-Fi is there, DSL are there, in-game. So these are some techniques are already there. So we are not going much more deep into this particular topic. We are just trying to realize what is the typical smart city architecture. So on the top of the sensing layer, and there we have one access network. And based on this access network, we have one transport network. So there the communication can be in terms of optical, in terms of 4G, 5G, or in terms of some internet-based communication also possible. Right. So these are the total. These two is to sense some information, to sense some information, or to distribute some information. So these are the two layers. There is another layer which is called your data layer. So in this data layer, what we are doing, we are actually, or we are interpreting such data, or we are extracting some meaningful information of such from such sensed information. So this data layer is actually collecting all such data which has been transmitted with the help of communication layer and sensing layer, and those data are stored on these urban basis databases in terms of your population info. Like it could be any kind of information, and we have to give them different category. Right, under different category, data will be stored in that respective cloud space or the data storage space. So that is very a common part. So here you can see that when a data is being transmitted and it is captured by some edge node in the data layer, they are now trying to push into some different storage space. So it could be some, based on the type of the data, it could be stored inside your population info database, or it could be some enterprise info like database, or it could be some geospatial info kind of databases or economic info databases. So there could be different databases. Like it is possible that we may have more databases also based on their category or types of data. And on the top of these, we have different cloud infrastructures who are actually getting such data. It is possible also like this. So it is maybe kind of mesh topology. So those cloud infrastructure could be your administration infrastructure, it could be your industry infrastructure, it could be your public infrastructure, like cloud infrastructure. So they are actually handling such data, like whatever the data stored in those databases. Or there could be some other databases also. So all those cloud platforms are actually, they're handling those data. So what is the purpose of handling such data? Obviously, those clouds are actually accessing such data to provide a better data sharing environment or data fusion, statistics or analysis, or some intelligent decision based on those data which are stored on the inside my database. Right. So this is kind of a typical overview of your data layer, where data are being stored in different storage spaces based on their categories. And there are some cloud infrastructure who are actually handling or accessing such data to achieve the goal. So the goal could be your data sharing, the goal could be your data fusion or statistical analysis or some decision making capabilities. To build such kind of features, we need some data. So we are storing such data inside my urban basis databases. Right. So this is kind of your typical data, right? And obviously that is all about your infrastructure kind of things, infrastructure level architecture. Now, while we are talking about application layer environment, like what are there in this application layer, then we can see there are different kind of application. It could be a smart grid. So we are not discussing this intelligent building because these are part I hope we know. So smart grid, intelligent building, like smart healthcare. So smart healthcare means we are actually monitoring patient health over internet. Doctor is being responsible for monitoring the patient remotely. So it could be possible. So these are kind of applications like smart healthcare. We should talk about like digital forensics, how we can handle such data, evidence, specifically evidence for a crime case. So those are some applications. So these all application, it is not limited to only this application. There could be a possibilities of having more than application that we can see here. So these are some listed applications that can be used in these smart cities, like your intelligent transportation, food and drug safety, distance learning. So it is nowadays it's very popular. Emergency services, public safety and security, and smart meters. So these are some kind of applications where we are getting some services. So how they are operating? They are actually operating based on some activities like data sharing activities, data fusion, or statistical. So how they can do with the help of clouds? How cloud can do with the help of the stored information which are available in your databases, respective databases based on their categories. How those data is being categorized and stored in this database based on this communication layer. And how they get this data, obviously, some sensors or some kind of physical entity who is responsible for transmitting those data to this cloud space. So this is an overview of your smart city architecture. Now here we can see there are lots of opportunity in this smart cities while we are talking about the security scope in the smart cities. Because now we only talk about this communication or the overall architecture. For example, we don't know how this IoT devices or set of devices they are actually sharing those data. Sharing those data from one IoT device to another IoT device. For example, they are sharing among themselves. They are actually, for example, there is one device, this is device, they are also sharing. They are not sending to this cloud space, for example, okay? Prior to sending those data in the cloud space, they also make sure that those data are genuine, something like that, for example. So how they are sharing those data is also kind of challenge, right? Now, challenge here. The challenge is, for example, you have one IoT device, okay, and that is provided by Samsung, for example. Another IoT device which is provided by your Amazon, just for example, okay. So these are some IoT device. For example, we are now trying to communicate with one IoT device to another IoT device, but we know that those IoT devices are being provided by different manufacturers. So different manufacturers always have their different communication style, different how to say data format, like sharing the data in different formats. So there are lots of integration problems and the security problems may arise while we have different different IoT devices from different manufacturers as well. Right. So this is kind of your sensing layer security kind of things. Like we are actually considering different kind of data format and their communication. During communication, with the help of, like, for example, Wi-Fi security or 5G security, that is also an explicit concern while we are talking about smart city, like while we are realizing about smart cities. Or while we are storing such data in our database, how we can store such data in our database, whether we need to encrypt. If I need to encrypt such data, how to access the data? Because when a data is being encrypted, those data cannot be searched, right? So for that, maybe we need some kind of extra token or some identifier who can identify that specific data. So there are some challenges while we are talking about security. Security is not limited nowadays into one-to-one security. So we'll be discussing later. So this is a typical overview of your smart city system, smart city overview architecture. So there are three different key issues like that impact cyber security risk or cyber risk in your smart cities. So the first one is your convergence of the cyber and physical space. Convergence of the cyber and the physical space. So physical space is physical world. So here you can see that smart city actually blurs the line between the physical and the cyber world, right? So in this environment, people, your processes and the places are integrated via both information technology, like via both IT systems used for data-centric computing and your operational technology systems also that are being used to monitor the event, the process, and the devices and adjust the city operations also. Right. So now we can see there are different entities. They are actually sharing source data with the help of probably the IoT, a strong connectivity in different devices, and then with the help of edge computing, probably also we are also sharing such data with the help of cloud infrastructures. So, however, the convergence here we can say where many devices in the edge. So this is your edge. Like many devices in the edge could be like cyber threat vectors. But it is possible. So it gives rise to the risk of your malicious actors, like that can enter the system and disrupt the operation on the ground. So thus we can say that it is exponentially expanding the cyber risk landscape because now we are sharing those data not only from not only inside my phone. However, also we are sharing to a different technology as well. So that's the part here we are talking about. From physical space, we are sharing the data into our cyber space. So while transmitting the data is much more like risky. So we have to concern on this particular aspect. That is the convergence of the cyber and physical space. The next one is your next one. The next one could be your sorry. The next one could be your interoperability between the legacy and the new system. So while we are talking about smart cities, for example, before the smart city, we have also communication, right? Also we have handles many data, different kind of data, but those data are, and for those infrastructure comes under your legacy infrastructure, right? So here what we can see that while we are talking about new infrastructure, a smart city where every technologies are connected, they are sharing the data in a reliable manner, then those infrastructure must incorporate the functionalities of legacy system, or you can say that legacy system also should accept this transformation new transformation. So it is kind of a challenge, because while like often like your organization that pressure this digital transformation need to integrate a new digital technologies with legacy system, which can create like different significant, like different kind of security challenges and risks. So here you can see that these challenges include some inconsistent security policies, or it could be some inconsistent procedures. Like new system is accepting that process, but old system is not accepting this process. So those lots of integration problem also uh, result the hidden security vulnerabilities. So another challenge is the lack of like your what to say kind of another challenge it could be in this particular segment. It could be the lack of generally accepted standards governing the functioning of your like IoT enabled devices. So that we have already discussed in the last slide. Like there are different kind of devices which are installed inside our city, for example. Okay, so like city department and their agencies typically use different sensor technologies, right? So those sensor technologies, they are using different sensors or smart IoT devices or gadget from different vendors, because we are always run behind money, right? So wherever we can find some a cheap product, for example, so we'll buy it. Okay, so if we buy, so no matter it is coming from the same company or not, we don't look at that particular matter. So different companies, they have different file format. They have different communication strategy. They have different uh, sharing mechanisms or algorithm. So how we can integrate? How we can integrate? So that is kind of a huge challenge that comes under your this segment. That is interoperability between the legacy and the new system. So that is the second issue in this smart city. The third one, it would be realized as the integration of several distinct entities to provide a robust infrastructure. To provide a robust infrastructure. So these are the third issue in this smart city. That is the integration of several distinct entities to provide a robust infrastructure. So what we can see traditionally, the city have offered a wide range of services, right? So it could be your healthcare, or it could be your emergency service, it could be your electricity, power, or it could be your law enforcement, for example, cyber crime, or some different level of governance. So there are different types, like distinct technologies or concept. Now we are integrating in a smart city, right? So in the smart city, we are integrating such kind of thing. So each of these like services was typically provided by a single agencies, their respective agencies, right? So they have their own system, they have their own process, they have their own security algorithm, they may use their own file format. Now these services are slowly being integrated and linked through interconnected way of digital technologies, means with the help of your IoT technologies. So that is also kind of your challenge, like how we can integrate. Like while we are integrating, are we considering the security factors during our integration of different technologies? So that those are kind of another like key issue uh, in your smart city. So here you can see that as like cities nowadays gain opportunities for new services and efficiencies. So here what we can say that cybersecurity challenges may increase while we are talking about these smart cities. So cyber risk will continue to evolve in our like upcoming years, obviously, as many cities they are planned to integrate a wide variety of services as well as different infrastructure, hyper connections, so lots of data. So even more cybersecurity challenges or the cyber risk will come up in this smart city. So this is a typical situation, or you can say that it's kind of cities, the smart city revolution, or like how we can measure a city is under which category. So that is we can see here. So here it is kind of understanding the cyber risk uh, evolutionary path in this smart cities. Most smart cities follow a four-stage evolutionary path that relies on varying mixes of new and legacy technologies. Right. So with each of these in this curve, what we can see that there are slowly improvement while you are improving your society, like slowly, cybersecurity risk it is getting hard. So during this initial stage, when the data is being collected through a small number of city controlled device, for example, or like hardwares or different sensors, the potential breach points are generally limited. So, for example, here, so early stage of your smart city journey through the ad hoc and unconnected pilot initiative. So that is very initial stage of your smart city consideration. So here what you can see that we have some limited number of devices or sensors they are sending us some data. Okay. So our scope is very much limited. However, if you focus on the next part, it is the intentional phase, like phase. So here you can see, like in the next phase, when a city like starts to collect data from different citizens. Nowadays, we are collecting data from the people. Like Google is collecting some data, user information, like private in terms of your not your date of birth. Private information means where you are going every day or how you are going, how many times you spend in a specific location. Those data also kind of your private information, right? So from those data, you can identify what is the habit of that person or characteristics of that person or characteristics of that person. So we can somehow define that. So that's why we are saying nowadays, like when you're talking about intentional phase or stage, so there a city is starting like is collecting the data from citizens' smartphones or smart devices. So when they are collecting those devices, that is okay. We are not talking about Google or Amazon. We are just talking about some infrastructure who are actually infrastructures who are like they are saying collecting the users or the citizens' information using smartphones. Are they secure, or are they providing like specific security mechanisms? We most of the time we don't bother about that. How many of us, when we are accessing some bank account, for example, over internet, how many times we see our URL, web URL? So it is coming from a same thing or not? Because I hope you know that similar kind of Facebook page, for example, it is possible to generate, right? So don't focus on that only that web page, for example. So are we seeing that web link? So it is coming from the same link or not? Sometimes many of us we don't follow that, right? So while the third party infrastructure, they are system, they are actually collecting such data with the help of your smartphone, smart gadgets, or any kind of smart watches. So then we have to focus on their like security strategy. Otherwise, there could be many security breaches could be possible during their data collection. Data collection. The last advanced stage, for example, your transformed phase here. So in the transform phase, it is the most advanced stage you can think. Like from the initial phase, we have totally transformed our cities in a smart city. So here you can see in the most advanced stage is like when the software. So now it is not only a single infrastructure or system is taking data from you. Multiple infrastructures also they are taking data from you, the same kind of data. Okay. So when a software bots at the core, like they're using like artificial intelligence or artificial intelligence to make decision and act without human involvement, there might be more potential attack or potential risk could be there. Because now we are not going, for example, we are not visiting bank in person, right? We are just using their infrastructure, online infrastructure, or we are sharing our data to some healthcare infrastructure. Different infrastructure could be possible in my smart city. So while we are talking about some software is collecting the data and sending their data based on intelligence, like artificial intelligence, then there is a lot of security like risk like that could be possible. So we can say in transform smart cities, the like the risk of this, the risk is continuous, like this endless. We cannot say in a transformed city that there is no risk anymore, because transform means they are adapting all the new culture. Whenever you are adapting all the new culture each and every year, for example, so there is a much more high potential. There is a possibilities of having high potential threats in my smart cities. So this is a typical graph where we are trying to see that there are different stages of smart cities like initial, intentional, integral, and transform. In initial setup, what we can see that like cities are collecting data and we are sending to government, like it is much more dedicated. We know everything beforehand. Just we are giving our option to machine. So that is very initial stage. While we are talking about transformation or transformed city, at that time we don't have much more control. Control means obviously we have a security control, but we don't have much more control. We just press, for example, most of us will press OK button, like OK button multiple times while installing some software. How many of us we read the terms and conditions? So these are some human nature. Okay, we cannot remove this nature, or we cannot just overlook this nature. We know that this will happen. This will happen. So whenever we are going towards transformed city, at that time most of the softwares, like mostly software will take your data and share your data among different space based on your artificial intelligence. Since we are doing like this, that means there is security risk, and the risk is not limited to a specific year, for example. It is an endless process and continuous process. So that's the graph of this. So in these slides, we are trying to understand the cyber risk based on the stages of the smart cities. So these are the security goal typically of a smart city. So while we are talking about cyber security risk, like security goal in your smart city, obviously we have three different factors. That is the integrity, your confidentiality, availability. Right. So this is very typical one. So we'll discuss this part, and also we'll discuss some other advanced security goals also. So coming to this first part, that is the confidentiality. So confidentiality means we know that the data secrets, data should not be disclosed while it is transmitting or while it is stored in our third-party space, storage space. That is known. But the thing is that confidentiality is very important while we are storing the data. Nowadays, while we are storing the data, because while we are talking about IoT platforms, most of the time some data which does not require any kind of confidentiality. For example, weather forecast. Just we are taking up a very simple example in smart cities. Like there are different sensors who are actually forecast the weather information. So those information does not require any kind of confidentiality. but obviously it should require some integrity information and authenticity information that those data is valid. So based on the different infrastructures or different services, we can say that confidentiality is also a key factor in your smart city. Right. So confidentiality means we are now not disclosing our data during the transmission and while it is stored in my storage space, like remote storage space. Okay. So that is the confidentiality. Now coming to this availability. While you're talking about availability, that means we are now sharing the data over web or internet. Now every node is carrying, for example, some set of your data. Right. So sorry, make sure if you are available or if you are like authorized user, those data should be available to you each and every moment. Each and every moment. Since it is a strongly connected, internet connected like environment, so your data should reach to you within, for example, 1 millisecond. It must, because now we are talking about connected environment. Since it is a connected environment, we cannot wait for a longer time. So we should only consider the network delay parameter, how much time we have as a network delay. We can only wait for that much time. Okay, and your data should be available all the time while we are talking about remote data storage. Right. So the third key factor that is called your integrity. So integrity is somewhat we can say that my data should be intact. Now, what does it mean? It means that while we are talking about smart cities, here, for example, smart transportation. So here, a vehicle or each set of vehicles, they are transmitting some data from OBU to RSU, roadside unit, for example. So they are now sharing such data. We make sure that we no need that whether you are a valid user or not. First, we'll check whether the data, whatever you have sent, that provides the integrity property. Right. So integrity property takes a huge role in the smart city. So it is very important factors. This is very important factors. So these are some important factors. So integrity, while you're talking about integrity means your data should be intact while transmitting or during the transmission, as well as during your storage. So your data should be intact. Data should be unaltered. Data should be should not be tampered. That comes under the integrity property. Now, the next property is the protection. So protection means in terms of, because confidentiality we have already discussed. Okay, so just forget about this. So if you are talking about protection, protection is towards your private information. Private information. Now, what could be your private information? Your date of birth is private. Your phone number is private. Your email ID is private or not. So you have to understand your private information first, and you have to discuss whether those data are really necessary to transmit or to be transmitted or not. Or even though when we are transmitting such data, how they are actually accessing those data or what they are doing with this data or with my data. That comes under your protection policy. Okay. It is not only the confidentiality, it is also providing the privacy and the safety of your data. Right. So that is your protection. And resilience. This is a very, very important part in your smart city. Okay. So in your smart city. Why? Because while you're talking about resiliency, so it is somewhat, it means that if your system is hanged or if your system is not working properly, how quickly it recovers. So resiliency actually stands for the capacity to recover quickly from its difficulties. How quickly we can do. Because since we are talking about different technologies, they are interconnected so tightly. So we cannot wait for like long time. So your system should know how to recover during its difficult time. So that is another key factor in your smart cities. Smart cities, very important factor. So these are some key factors like confidentiality, integrity, availability, resiliency, and protection. So this can be achieved with the help of cyber threat intelligence, cyber response and resilience, privacy by design itself, digital trust platform, and important part is cyber awareness. If our human being is not aware of your cyber security or the importance of the data, private data, then it doesn't matter whether you are designing any strong security infrastructure or not. Because who are actually sending those data, if they are not much more aware, at least they should have some ground level idea. If they are not aware of that, then it is very difficult to protect our data. So that's why we can say that these are some listed five techniques through which we can achieve these five factors. The first one is cyber threat intelligence, cyber response and resilience, privacy by design, digital trust platform, how we can provide the trust in a trustless environment. That means it's a concept of a blockchain. Okay, so this blockchain is also very important part in this smart cities also, because we know that for different sectors, for example, your ITS, intelligent transportation systems, or healthcare, or your digital forensic, or your different infrastructure, now they are incorporating among themselves and they are sharing their own stored data, right? So no one believe on other infrastructure. So that is a trustless environment, hybrid environment. So blockchain also provides this digital trust among these trustless entity, among this trustless environment. So those kind of things we are not going to discuss. So forget about this part. So we are just talking about how to achieve these factors like security goal, confidentiality, integrity, resiliency, protection, and availability. We can avail such kind of activities like your cyber threat intelligence, cyber response and resilience, privacy by its design, system design, digital trust platform, and your cyber awareness. Your cyber awareness. At least based on these five factors, we can achieve some of the security goals in this smart city, in your smart city. So in our smart cities, what are the key technologies are involved? So basically, if you are talking about what are the key technologies, the first technology come up in our mind, that is your IoT technology, where each and every devices based on some communication protocol and active internet, they can communicate with other devices. That is the concept of your IoT. Everyone can communicate with another devices, no matter whether you are a lightweight device or not, or no matter whether you have a less storage or computation capability or not, no matter anything, you can communicate with other entities. Okay, so based on your internet. So that is your Internet of Things concept, and it is very important in your smart cities, because without this Internet of Things concept, we cannot achieve our goal. We cannot realize even the smart cities functionality, basic functionality. The second technologies in the smart city that we can think, it is kind of a cloud computing services. This is not very important. I put wrongly. Like it is, you can say it is important, but it is very important. Cloud computing also can be replaced by your edge computing. Okay, so here you can say that the second technologies, it could be your cloud cloud computing or edge computing, which also takes a huge role in your smart cities. So edge computing is not a part of our discussion, so we are not going to discuss. But edge computing, typically we are saying cloud computing, where we are talking about, for example, these are some users or smart devices. Edge is always available here, and cloud is always available here. Okay, so cloud is always available here. So that means while you're talking about edge computing, the interaction time will must be enhanced over your cloud computing. So that is not a part of our discussion. So this is a second technology that could be could take a role in your smart cities. Another component is a smart computing devices. Smart computing devices. Although it is a IoT devices, but how they are solving our problem. So that can be another technology. So here you can think it is kind of age actually. The fourth one is your network of sensors, different sensors, and how they are communicating with other sensors. Okay, network of sensors. And the last one is, according to the slide, it is the communication based on the semantic web. So these are some listed technologies to realize the smart cities. To realize the smart cities. However, there are lots of other infrastructure and technologies also involved. For example, one technology which is involved that is called a blockchain. Also, so these are some listed technologies that are very useful in your smart cities. So, what could be our recommendation? So, recommendation in the smart cities in terms of security point of view. The first recommendation could be your establish a proper governance. Establish a proper governance. What does it mean? It means that identify and organize the key stakeholders, fulfill their policies, make them a force them to follow a like standard policies, and keep on watching them. Keep on watching them. A proper governance always will be required to protect our smart devices or even our private data in our smart cities. The second factor is service continuity. That is the service continuity. So service continuity is again another factor which tells us actually uh, like your different solutions or and methodologies on the cyber security backup data loss prevention, because it's very important how you are preventing data losses. Or even though if your one server is not working, should we stop working or should we wait for that? No. The answer is how we are dispatching or how we are transferring our responsibilities to another server, for example. Right. So that kind of things, like when you are transferring those services, how much security protections or how much security you are considering during that particular transfer is kind of another key recommendation could be listed. The third recommendation could be your protect information proactively. Protect your information proactively. It's very important that we need to protect our information proactively. So what does it mean? It means that your information-centric approach related to your information, related to your embed security within data, embed security within data. That means here you can talk about some kind of like hardware security, okay? Like your hardware security machine, HSM, hardware security module, HSM. So that kind of things you could consider in your smart society. That is the second part of this protection. And the third one is typically what we do, that is the utilize the encryption concept. What we do that is the last part, that is the encryption concept. But typically we sometimes don't consider about any this hardware security module, which is, I hope like you know, which is already used by many infrastructure, probably all infrastructure. So like they are using their hardware security module. Okay, so different level of hardware security module, and they are providing such keys. So that's the functionality of HSM. Okay, so forget about that. So the last part, if you are talking about, so that is your utilization of your encryption strategy. So here we give much more effort to provide the security as well as the privacy of the data. Right? So there are lots of encryption. Maybe we can see some of the encryption today, like in today's discussion. The next recommendation could be authenticate a user before giving some access right. Before giving some access right. So authenticate a user with a strong authentication mechanism. It's not like that, okay, you ask for an authentication, I have already implemented one authentication. It does not matter until and unless you can provide a strong authentication mechanism. This also prevents from accidental uh, disclosing of your credential and from attacking or and from like your unauthorized access from your unauthorized devices or from some gadgets. Threat intelligence. So threat intelligence is could be another recommendation while we are talking about the security measurement or how to deal with like security and privacy in your smart cities. That is the threat intelligence. So threat intelligence, here you can see that in order to like understand the major trends in terms of your potential attackers through analyzing trends on uh, like malware, security threats, and the vulnerabilities. So threat intelligence system should be there in our smart cities who can analyze some kind of your antivirus, right? So antivirus actually does their work, antivirus like does its work in the computer system, right? A physical, a single computer, for example, or a network. But similar kind of activities we can incorporate that comes under your threat intelligence or threat intelligence. So through which we can analyze the malware against the known malware. Some we have to analyze whether this is a malware or not. Some security threats or possible vulnerabilities. We have to keep on watching and we have to keep on analyzing those things. The next recommendation would be your managed security services. Managed security services. Also very essential. Outsourcing security services, like outsources different kind of like security services to the different providers. So here, the ICT leadership can, in that way, focus their fundamental duties, like what is their responsibilities or what is their functional duties of running their system fruitfully. So that we have to also consider here. So that is kind of your managed security services, right? So mostly we have to focus on the functional duties of running the city system. The next recommendation could be protect the infrastructure. Okay, protect the infrastructure by securing endpoints. So here the endpoints could be your gateway, it could be your firewall, it could be your honeypot. So there are different endpoints. You might be known. It is known. Like protect the infrastructure by securing different endpoints at different uh, like like based on their different infrastructure or their nature of communication. So protect our infrastructure by securing the endpoints, messaging, and web environments. Ensure continuous availability of your critical infrastructures, like your emergency services also, and develop an information management strategy. So these are some key recommendations that we can consider to provide a better security uh, for like better security of like human in your cities, for example, in your cities. So these are some kind of list of things what we have talked about so far. So far what we have discussed, that is the smart cities, like a definition of a smart city. Also we have seen a typical architecture of smart cities. From that architecture we have tried to analyze how to say which city is under which categories. So there are different phases we have seen, that is initial phase, transformation phase, or transform phase. Based on their different phases, there might have possibilities of having different cyber risks. After that, we have highlighted some of the key issues. Key issues, for example, the convergence from physical world to your digital transformation. When you are uh, moving from your new system to legacy system, or how they will interact, old system and new system. And the third key issue is everyone is connected, or everything is connected over internet, or every technologies are connected over internet. So how we can share the data. So those key issues we have also discussed. After that, we have discussed the cyber security threats in terms of your confidentiality, availability, integrity, as well as your privacy, data privacy, and your resilience property. how quickly you can solve it, how quickly you can overcome it. Right. And finally, we have seen some of the recommendation, like security recommendation, like the recommendation that are that we can consider during in our smart cities. In our smart cities. Now, we'll discuss one case study, like use case for a typical situation, and try to find out some of the attacks. And followed by, we'll discuss some kind of cryptographic technique. So far, we have just given some basic description about your smart cities. So let's see a typical overview. Like here we are now discussing about a use case of a typical scenario from the security perspective in a fine-grained data access or data transmission. So here in the smart cities, whether we are talking about healthcare or intelligent transportation system or any other kind of digital forensics or any kind of different kind of technologies or infrastructure, they are in your smart city. So probably they are using, for example, they are using different cloud space also, or the cloud server also, right? Or different clouds also, right? So in a typical situation, we are just discussing a typical situation. Okay, so don't take me wrong. So it is much more limited situation in these smart cities. So here we can see that there are different infrastructure who are using different kind of cloud spaces or the cloud storage. An end user can access those data with the help of IoT devices and their endpoint gateway, that is the edge devices. So in this picture, what we can see that there are different users. There are different users out there who are accessing some data with the help of gateway or endpoint that comes under this edge computing, and those edge devices actually getting those data or retrieve those data from the cloud spaces. Okay. And here there is one data owner who has already uploaded the data in any of these cloud platforms. For example, any of these cloud platforms. Now, with the help of this concept of these smart cities, people nowadays getting much more lazy, right? Much more lazy. So receiver does not want to know where this data is stored. Whether it is a Google space, for example, we have taken a name of this cloud space, for example, Google space, Microsoft cloud space, or Amazon cloud space. Receiver does not want to know where my data is stored. Data owner has chosen, for example, this Microsoft cloud space, but the receiver doesn't know. Receiver only knows that what is my file and how to access this. But receiver doesn't know where this data is located. So under such kind of situation where a data owner is sharing their data among any of these cloud spaces based on their like activities, a receiver access those data regardless their prior knowledge of file location. Without knowing the file location, can they access it? That is a concept of your smart cities where we are integrating different clouds or infrastructures where receiver is getting the data no matter whether it is stored in cloud or like Google Drive, whether it's stored in OneDrive or any kind of cloud space. Okay. So here in this particular features, or in this particular environment, what we can see that there are lots of end user who could be your malicious user. Could be malicious user. So how to define a malicious user? Malicious user means which already intentionally trying to breach the security. Each and every time they are sending some data and try to break the security. That is fully vulnerable or typically attacked. That could have possibilities of having a semi-trusted authority or semi-trusted entity. Those entities are not active attacker, however, they are always curious about it. So those kind of attacker could be your could be your edge devices or the gateways, right? Could be your gateways. And also the cloud service provider, also it is possible that they are semi-honest. They are, although they are providing you storage space, but they are also curious about what is your data. So under this situation, can a user send some request to access their own data? Not own means access the data which has been sent by this data owner. By providing that, they can maintain their authenticity, they can maintain their authorizations, proper access control, and provides the proper security. So this environment, how edge devices are finding the data, because the data typically data is being stored in an encrypted form. Right? For example, we have stored the data in an encrypted form in this Google space. How this edge device will find? So that's why we have said that it is basically how to access a data. How to access a data? It is based on your Control F, Control C, and Control V. Control F to find the data, Control C copy the data from that cloud space, and Control V paste means you are transmitting the data to the or you are sending those data to the receiver. Right. So that is the task of a typical edge devices or the gateway point of view. So in this particular environment, we are actually trying to see that how we can provide uniform or unified access control. Unified access control, where there are lots of cloud space, lots of cloud storage are there, and we are accessing data from any of these cloud without knowing the location of the file. So in this space, we can say that it is a multi-cloud environment where some clouds are semi-honest, some edge devices or gateway devices which are not fully trusted, also again like semi-honest devices, or as well as your multi-receiver where there are many receivers or many users, potential users, they're taking those data, they could be malicious entity. So how the data owner, for example here, the data owner can store those data in the cloud space, ensuring that their data will be protected properly, or their healthcare, for example, if you're talking about healthcare, then the patient will get make sure that their data must be secured in that particular cloud space where the receiver or the doctor only can get those data. Okay, so how to provide such kind of unified access control in such kind of environment? So if you are considering this environment, probably you may find out some of the security requirements in this platform. So what could be those security requirements? The first one is the data confidentiality. We have already discussed, and lots of other like uh, like means we have already seen this data confidentiality. We are not going to discuss this much more. So data confidentiality should be there. Access control should be there, must be there. And this is very important in the smart society, how you are accessing the data. So this is very important, the access control. And then the next one is your authenticity. So if you are focusing on this particular infrastructure, then the authenticity is carries like two making during the file upload by the data owner and during the request for downloading a file. We are providing the authenticity. So here the authenticity is much more required at this side. When a receiver actually tries to access those data, how to provide the authenticity. So that is much more required. Rather, you are uploading the data. Uploading the data, there also authentication is required, but we are now talking about the where the authentication or authenticity is much more required. That is the receiver end, who is accessing the data. Their authentication is much more required. Some of the other security challenges, it would be your subscriber management. It would be your low latency. Low latency means we cannot wait for a long time. How our infrastructure, in terms of smart society infrastructure, they can provide my data or they can send my data within a fraction of a second. How can we do this? That is the low latency. The next one is how we can, because we are trying to make people actually lazy. So here, the next security challenge is how to omit the constraint of prior knowledge of your file location. So we no longer to remember where we have shared our data. If you have the knowledge of the file itself, you can access the data. A simple user, because smart city is for everyone, it is not for only professional people, or it is only for literate, educated people. It could be like it should also support for some other user who is not much more educated or who is actually know this user. So maybe they don't know where my file is. So how we can provide such kind of features in a secure manner? So our protocol should be simple enough for a novice user also who can download a file from a cloud space or from a remote storage space. It is also much more serious concern nowadays, right? Because now we are talking about not a single cloud platform. Due to the smart cities, we have already discussed, there could have some multiple clouds. So each and every time you should remember which cloud platform we have stored the data. No. But we have to remember what file I need to access. If you know that, then you are good to go. You can get the access. So that is kind of some of the security challenges in this particular scheme, or not scheme, in this particular system model. In this particular system model. So for the first challenge we have discussed, that is your confidentiality. The second we have discussed, that is the access control, which is very important. Third one is the authenticity, like who is sharing the data and who is receiving the data. Both require to be checked, like both need to be checked for their authenticity. Okay, whether they are valid user or not. However, the receiver's authenticity is much more important part in this such kind of environment. Next challenge we have discussed, that is the subscriber management, like how you are dealing with the revocation or user revocation. Like for example, in smart cities, there are lots of users, and those users, some of the users are already pointed out. They are attacker. We have already pointed out. So how to revoke them? So that is another kind of challenges or the security challenges in our uh, smart city protocol or infrastructure. Low latency and your prior knowledge, removal of your prior knowledge. So these are some listed security challenges that we can work on to solve this problem or to provide the better human life, to provide them a better services. Now we'll be discussing the last part of this talk, that is the possible cryptographic techniques. So what could be my possible cryptographic techniques that we can use to achieve those functionalities? What are those functionalities? That is the confidentiality, access control, authenticity, as well as we have also discussed about um, like revocation, user revocation, which is very important. We should not build only the encryption scheme. At the same time, we have to think about how to deal with attacker also. How to deal with the attacker also. If I can find out this is my attacker, can I revoke him? So very important, right? So, and also we have discussed that is the low latency. That is another inherent component you can think that we cannot wait for that. Okay. So low latency always should be there. Um, this is not any advantage. This is kind of your inherent properties you can think of. And the last one is how to build a system or smart society's protocol or secure protocol in such a way that a novice user also can access your data or can use this your infrastructure. They don't know much more. They don't have any much more idea about the cloud space, or they don't know much more knowledge about the edge computing or gateways or authentication. Nothing, or like how you can access the file. They only know the file information. They only know the file information that user A has sent me one file. The file name is xyz.c, for example. So how to get that file? I don't know where it has to. So these are some requirements, the security requirements or challenges we have discussed. So some of the possible cryptographic techniques which takes a huge role to solve this kind of problems. The first one is typically we know that the public cryptography. We have already seen a lecture on public cryptography and and some other techniques also, but we are not going to discuss all those in much more detail. We are just giving you some high-level idea. So here, we know that public key cryptography is always useful to transmit a data where the data is very short, very small. We cannot deal with the large data with public key cryptography because public key cryptography itself introduces some kind of extra overhead in terms of their computation. So while my file is very big or while my data is very big, I cannot encrypt that file using my public key cryptography. I can use, but it is not conventional. It is not recommended. So what I can do there, I will use my symmetric encryption to encrypt this file, and that key should be used, but that key is further encrypted. For example, I have encrypted this file and using symmetric encryption, for example, AES or DES, and that file name is city. Wow. And then, since I have used this AES encryption algorithm, I'll be using some symmetric key to encrypt that file, right? So I need to also share this. So that is the main problem in symmetric encryption, right? So that we can overcome that like using the public key cryptography. So there, I'll be sharing this key with the receiver using the public key cryptography. I'll use this public key cryptography concept. I'll get another cipher. Another cipher. So the user will finally send this CT1 plus CT2 to the cloud space or to anywhere. When a receiver, suppose this is my receiver, okay, my handwriting is very poor, I'm very sorry for that. So this is my receiver. So this receiver will first decrypt this file, get the key, and then it uses this key, this user uses this key to decrypt this file. A very simple technique. So that is the conventional technique, and that are being used for long time. We are using this kind of concept. So symmetric key encryption or the symmetric encryption, standard symmetric encryption, there are lots of encryption techniques are there, and we cannot comment on it. What we can comment, that is how we can design an efficient public key encryption scheme. So there are some possible techniques which can take a huge role. The first one is your attribute-based encryption. Already I think we know this technique because we have already a talk. We had a talk on this attribute-based encryption system, right? Key aggregate crypto system, which is very popular, getting popular nowadays. And the last one is your proxy encryption. So we'll see these three algorithms or three techniques briefly to identify what they can do or how to achieve this. Okay. So that is the first part. Using this public key encryption scheme, we can achieve confidentiality. Right? So these challenges we have already discussed. Data confidentiality we can achieve using public key cryptography and symmetric cryptography. How we can use access control? Again, that can be used, but that can be done using two concepts. The first one is using cryptography, and second one is using your network security. Okay, access control can be achieved, or these features can be achieved using cryptography as well as your network security. Both are different. Okay, so using cryptography now we're talking. So encryption algorithms, some of the encryption algorithms that we will discuss today, that is also handle this access control, can provide the access control. Authenticity also can be provided using your cryptographic technique. Subscriber management in terms of revocation, that can be also done using encryption technique. Low latency, how we can provide this low latency? For this, we can use some other concept, like the concept of your content-centric network, CCN, or could be your like this part of like NDN, HDN, those kind of things. Using that, also you can achieve this, right? So these are the techniques. So first, this set of techniques that they are possible for providing confidentiality, providing authenticity, providing access control, right? And providing, it is responsible for providing your revocation. Revocation, right? So these are some cryptographic techniques, there are lots of other techniques are also there who can provide this kind of features. Content retrieval, since we know that the data is being encrypted using some encryption technique, so those data can be decrypted. But the thing is how to search those data, because those data are already encrypted in cloud space. So how to retrieve such data? That can be done using some token-based encryption scheme. So that can be done using your searchable encryption. Okay, searchable encryption. So using this searchable encryption, we can retrieve some encrypted data, even anonymously. Even anonymously. And obviously, the hashing algorithm is always there to provide the proper integrity during transmission and during storage as well. So these are some possible techniques. So there are lots of other techniques. Please make sure that you make a note that there are some other techniques also there. But these are some highlighting techniques that are quite useful in such kind of situation. Okay. So this is one attribute-based encryption. Will not discuss this attribute-based encryption because already we have discussed this part. Some of the eminent speakers already have given lecture on this. So here we are just saying that we are considering attribute-based encryption where a user is being identified based on a set of descriptive attributes, and any user can access any encrypted data if their descriptive attributes matches with some policy. Set of attributes matches with some policies. That means there will be one user sender who will encrypt using some policy, encrypt a message using some policies based on some logics, and the receiver will be there. He or she should have some descriptive attributes. So what do we mean by these descriptive attributes? That means it could be some information which has some description. For example, your department. Okay. For example, your location or your native place, your phone number, or not phone number, it's kind of single identity. Cannot be. Some other identities, it could be like what is your job. So job is also descriptive identity, it's not in unique information. Some kind of other information which is not unique. Some fuzzy information is there. Those kind of attributes should be there to identify a unique, to identify user. So where a sender will send an encrypted message using some logic, under some logic, but specifically it will consider one policy. Who can decrypt the message? If this is my receiver has some descriptive attribute. If it matches this particular policy, then they can decrypt the message. So this is very important. This attribute-based encryption scheme is actually much more appreciated for multi-receiver environment. Multi-receiver environment. What does it mean? It means that there could have a possibility that there could have some possibilities like where there are lots of users are accessing same data, the same data. There, that is kind of a multiple receivers. Instead of encrypting a same message for multiple users multiple times, I'll be using a single encryption algorithm. I'll run that algorithm for a single time or for only once, and I'll just consider one policy. Whoever will support that policy or satisfy that policy, they can decrypt the message. So that is the basic concept of attribute-based encryption. So that is the first part. The second part here, key aggregate promises, key aggregate crypto system. This key aggregate cryptography system is somewhat different than your identity attribute-based encryption. So here we are not talking about who is my receiver. We are talking about based on the file classes, based on different file classes. What does it mean? It means that a file will be encrypted based on its type. So whether it is a video file, whether it is an audio file, whether it is a text file, whether it is my personal file, whether it is a shared file, there are different types. Okay. A sender will encrypt a file based on your types, and the sender will give the access rights to the decryptor certain for certain times. Okay, and those decryptor, because we are not going to discuss this for detail, because if I discuss, then we run out of time. So we are not going to discuss. We're just trying to give some basic idea. So encryptor will use some file index. Encryptor will use some file index or the file class, and based on that file class, he or she will encrypt the message. A decryptor who supports this file like file class, for example, that means he has some delegated access rights for that particular file class or the file type, then only the decryptor will can decrypt the message. In attribute-based encryption, there is no file type. Okay, there is no file classifications. Okay, so but here we have much more. We have like fine-grained access control. Okay, it's not supporting. So fine-grained access control, right? You know, I think fine-grained access control. Fine-grained access control is provided by this using this key aggregate crypto system. Now the next one is your proxy re-encryption. It is very important in distributed system where there are lots of different infrastructures are there or technologies are there, and they are incorporating into a single platform. So proxy re-encryption is someone, for example, I am the sender. Now I have encrypted a message. I promote someone on behalf of me who can do my work. That is called your proxy re-encryption. So proxy re-encryption facilitates re-encryption. One more time, it will provide the encryption on behalf of a legal sender for the consumer. What does it mean? For example, there is a communication between Bob and Alice, and Bob wants to encrypt a message. Bob hasn't decided like yet that who is his potential receiver. Bob just has encrypted the message and stored in the cloud space. Bob has delegated some access rights to its proxy server. Now, whoever, for example, Alice wants to access the data, then the proxy server will perform another level of encryption. So here you can see this is the re-encryption, another level of encryption, so that this Alice, the user, can decrypt this message. This Alice can decrypt this message. So this is very interesting and very useful technique in our distributed computing environment. So that is called your proxy re-encryption. This last one is not any encryption technique. So that is not any cryptographic concept. Okay, that is not any cryptographic concept. That is kind of a network security related concept. Here, this concept name is named data networking. Named data networking, and this this technique or this technology will help the user to forget the file location. Simply we can say. For example, so there is a Bob and Alice. Those are the two users who are in my network. Okay, Bob has generated one encrypted file. Now, how to transmit that encrypted file, or how to transmit the file? Should Alice will conduct or consult directly with this Bob and get the file? The answer is no. That Alice will ask to its nearby location, and this node, for example, this is one Indian node, and that Indian node will try to find out, do I have this file or not? If it is not, then it will ask its peers. Okay, so for example, this is one peer and this is another peer. Okay, so it will ask about the same file to its peer, and that peer or that Indian node is trying to find out whether this file is present in my location or not, my local space, local storage space or not. If it is not, then it will ask for this nearby to its nearest peer. In this way, we can ask for the same file to this Bob. Now you may ask, like, what is the funny thing here? It is very common. The advancement or advantage of this Indian protocol is that while it is transmitting or while it is replying back to this particular user, it will follow the same location. It will follow the same path that it has traversed. Okay, so first this user, for example, first this user will ask the will response to this node because he got the response from this node, right? So that is very good one, and that is very trivial. Next, this node will respond to this node because this J node already has made one request to this node I previously. That's why it is responding. Now it is responding, and now it is responding like this. The interesting property is that each and every time while it is transmitting those data, it will store the data in its local space. In such a way that in a secure and reliable way, in such a way that, for example, there is another user whose nearest node, Indian node, is this one, and asking for the same file. So in the next run, this node, but interestingly, this node will never ask for the same data to this particular user. Right? It will ask for the same file. It will directly send the data to this user without any delay. Without any delay. So in this way, we can improve the latency. We can improve the latency, data latency. So these are some strategies or the technique which we can incorporate in our smart society system to achieve such goals which we have already discussed. So that's all for today's presentation, and these are some list of items that we can note for the smart cities. First of all, that is the IoT, blockchain, and federated learning. That is the AI, edge computing, and cloud computing. There will be in future there will be much more strong connection among these particular technologies. Okay, so here to provide the better services in smart cities. Although we know that we have a high performance infrastructure or high end device, it does not mean that it will always give you security, always provide security. So it means that not like that. If we have a very huge infrastructure, it will always give you data security. Okay, so data security or data reliability in terms of their device trust, in terms of their communication strategy, in terms of your user privacy, in terms of their authentication, anonymity, and non-repudiation. So these are some kind of things, requirement, which collectively ensures the reliability of the data. And in near future, the communication will be not limited to one-to-one communication. In near future, the communication many or many-to-many. So how to provide this kind of requirements, all these requirements in that particular type, like highly connected system. Next one is people nowadays are sharing their sensitive data without knowing its potential receiver, without knowing its potential receiver. So how we can provide that? Here we have already discussed that can be done using kind of your NDN concept or any kind of content-centric network concept. We should not always focus on this cryptography. Always, also we have to consider this network security to provide a better access control in our smart cities. So that's a pretty like a couple of things that we can note it. And the last one we can say that always while we are talking about smart cities or how to protect our data. So in terms of to provide those kind of trustworthiness or the security, first you have to find out whether your device is trustworthy, right? So if your device is not trustworthy, so you can think about any kind of security goals or any kind of security structures. And that is another recommendation from my side that like don't focus on the only typical communications or whatever you can see on the web in front of you. Try to check the behind the protocol and the protocol styles and the communication pattern. So that's the part. And also try to monitor your login information. So these are the things, couple of things that we can, as a human being, we can make a note to provide the data security in our smart cities. So that's like a brief discussion about the cybersecurity scope in these smart cities. So that's it. Thank you for your attention. I'd like to thank you all for paying your attention. So if you have any doubt, you can mail me. You can mail me right here, or you can ask me that.
Thank you so much, sir, for this nice session. We have one query from the participant side. Uh, he's asking any protocol strategy with respect to the complete architecture. Mute, your microphone is mute.
Okay, so yeah, I can also see that any protocol strategies with respect to a complete architecture. First of all, the thing is that there is no complete architecture so far. Okay, based on your requirement, for example, in your city, is there any smart healthcare or not? For example, is there any digital forensic system or not? So first, you have to identify the list of technologies, and then you have to define your protocol, or you have to uh, you have to design your protocol in such a way. So if you ask directly, is there any typical standard protocol is there or not? Frankly speaking, I don't know. I don't think like is there any specific single protocol is available to provide a complete security in our smart cities. But I would obviously suggest that first you have to identify your technologies. What are the technologies are available in our smart cities, and what are the requirement of the user? So it's not like that whatever we have discussed so far in the slides, those everything will be required by a specific series. Here I have prepared the slides in terms of like to provide a overall idea. There are much more other security patterns also. So there is no fixed protocol strategies. But obviously, if you want to enable some kind of anonymity, or you want to remove the file location, you can go for content centric network. In smart city, maybe you can focus on this multiple receivers encryption technique, like where data is not being shared by only, uh, not being shared or and used by only a single user. However, they are using multiple receivers in our platform. So you can use some kind of multiple receivers encryption technique. You can provide a specific data access control. You can incorporate your authorization technique, proper authorization technique, and the most important thing is the authentication. Anonymous authentication is much more efficient. Like it's not only authentication. If you're talking about anonymous authentication, for example, like it will not ask for who you are without asking, without knowing your identity. It will be also able to authenticate yourself, and that is very important nowadays in smart society, because like there are lots of users, lots of devices, and they have each and everyone has their own ID. So how many times we'll keep on publishing our IDs or information? Rather than we can provide some anonymous authentication technique also to authenticate our user, something like this. So these are some couple of techniques you can incorporate in your system to provide a robust or single architecture. So that I can say.
Thank you for such nicely explaining the query.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any further queries if the participants have?
Yeah. So I would like to say that my email ID has changed. So if you have any doubt, for example, you just use here CSE, like mail dot CAC. Handwriting is again very poor. Sorry for that. NSYSU. Dot edu dot Thailand. So the first one is correct. Harijit.Parathi @ this one. So if you want, you can share some of your thoughts or queries. If you want, you can send mail anytime.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So may I disconnect now?
Yes, sure.
Thank you, everyone, for your attendance, and thank you, ma'am, for your invitation.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
So, participants, we have another session left. that will be on stress management from Art of Living. So we shall be meeting at 2 p.m. in our second session for day 5. Thank you all.